Hey, future bestsellers, I'm Lisa Daly. Today we are going to talk all about foreign contracts. I know, exciting, right? Let's go. And this is actually the reason I did this video, because I just happened to get one like 2 days ago. So the first part of the contract is generally the rights, territories, and the language in which the foreign rights edition will be published. If you sold your book to a publishing house in France, then they might just take French rights in France, but they also might buy foreign rights for all the other countries where French is spoken, and that's quite a few. The second part you'll find in your contract is how big is your advance? And of course, if you're the author, that's the first paragraph you want to go to. Foreign advances can really run the gamut from a few $100s to tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. It really depends on how much other competition there is for the book, who the author is, and how much in love with the book the acquiring editor is at any given house. And having been in publishing for a long time, I can tell you that I actually know people and have seen rights deals where the same book sells for $1,000 to one foreign publisher and $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to another foreign publisher. For different countries. And it's not necessarily related to the size of the country or the number of books that they might potentially sell in that country. Like a lot of what happens in publishing, it can be totally random. The next part of the contract often deals with your particular royalties for the book. So because 15 Minutes of Shame is going to come out in trade paperback, which is like this. It's a paperback, but it's a bigger size versus like the small ones that are mass market. Royalty rates for trade paper start at about 7.5%. For this particular contract, they start at 8% for the first 1,000, going to 10% up to 2,000, and then anything over 2,000 copies sold gets an 11% royalty rate. And that's a pretty decent rate for a trade paperback. I'm pretty happy with that. Also, it spells out later in the contract what your rights are for ebook sales. And in this particular contract, I'll get a 30% royalty on ebook sales, which is actually better than what I got on ebook sales for the US edition. I think I make 25% on that contract. So a lot of the contract is going to be covering things like how often you get paid, what happens if you want an audit of your sales, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Also in the contract, you have a lot of different clauses about when the rights revert back to the author. For this particular contract, it's for a 5-year period with the option to extend. But it has a lot of reversion clauses that are really beneficial to the author in particular. So if they don't pay the advance fast enough or the royalties on time, the rights automatically revert. If they violate any part of the contract, like they don't publish it fast enough or they don't get cover approval, which we'll talk about that in a second, the rights automatically revert back. And of course, it includes what happens if or when the book goes out of print, as most books eventually do, how the rights revert back to the author. And basically in the case of this particular contract, if the book goes out of print and I say, hey, the book has gone out of print, other than like an ebook or a print-on-demand version, you have 4 months to put out another edition or the rights revert back to me. And that's a pretty tight little time window, but I have to say as an author, I really appreciate it because with US publishing contracts, so often the publishers sit on rights forever that they don't use, and it's impossible to get them back. And that can be really frustrating because if you're going to exploit those rights and put the book out in bookstores and do new editions, etc., awesome, that's fantastic. But if you're going to just sit on them forever and not do anything with them, then by all means, the publisher should, send the rights back to the author, who can put them up on Kindle or sell them to another publisher, but not have them just languish forever in publishing hell. So the next part of the contract talks about delivery and publication, when I have to have my materials to them, which was basically, like I said, a 30-second email. How quickly after we sign the contract do they have to publish the book? In this case, it's 18 months, although we just made the deal a few months ago, and they are actually publishing this book in July. And it's very rare for publishers to sit, once they decide to publish a book, unless there are problems with the manuscript or the translation or something, it's pretty rare for them to sit on them that long. But again, if they don't publish in 18 months, the rights revert back to me. There's also another clause about preparation for press, and this basically says what the publisher has to do before they get the book ready for press. So one of the things that I found really interesting about this particular contract is that I had both cover approval and title change approval. Now, it's not uncommon for a publisher in a foreign country to change the title in your book, because sometimes titles just don't translate well. So in the case of this book, 15 Minutes of Shame, it's a play on an Andy Warhol quote, "Everybody in the future will have 15 minutes of fame." And it didn't really translate well. It wasn't really appropriate for the Czech audience. So they actually changed the title to "How to Embarrass Yourself Quickly and Easily," which I think is a hoot. I really like that title. Now, here's something that's really funny. I have never had cover approval in my life. I have never had title approval in my life. Generally, anything that is on the outside of the book is the publisher's domain, so that means cover, title, back cover copy. Anything on the inside of the book, i.e. the text of the book, is the writer's domain. And so we have final say basically on the inside, they have final say on the outside. And that's generally how it goes. So I was delighted for the first time ever to have cover and title approval. But of course, it's with a publisher that I completely love, who did these beautiful cover. And look at the new cover for 15 Minutes of Shame. How awesome is that, right? So the one place where I have cover approval, I don't need it. Other parts of the contract deal with copyright, registering that, with remainders, basically what to do with books that are left over once the publisher decides that they're done. Usually those can be purchased by the author for quite a bargain. And as in most publishing contracts, there is a clause in here where you certify that you as the author did in fact write this book and have the rights to sell it, how to terminate the contract, and as always, almost always the final paragraph in any publishing contract is basically that paragraph or two that says the money goes to the agent and the agent sends the money to the author. So they got to make sure they get their money. Yeah. And finally, the contract covers what happens, where you're going to duke it out, what court, in the event that everything all goes to crap. So that's it for foreign rights. If you have any questions, if I missed anything, if you think of something that I didn't cover that you would like for me to cover in a future video, or you just have a quick question on something you heard today, please definitely leave me a comment in the comment section below. I am very happy to hear from you, and I would like to answer all of your publishing questions to the best of my ability. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will be posting new writing and publishing videos every Monday and Wednesday. If you like this video, please hit subscribe, ding, right down there, and be sure to ding that little bell so that you'll be notified every time I post new writing videos.